What makes the greats great? What makes the successful successful? What makes the brilliant brilliant? Our Tuesday meetups with the celebrities of pharma industry and science are your one-stop shop to all these answers and more. Join us for Pies of Life, an initiative of the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program, where we bring your dream mentors to you.
All right. So I was born and raised in a small town south of Dallas, Texas. I attended St. Mary's University in Texas and earned a bachelor's in chemistry. I did a summer research program at the University of Nebraska at a top pancreatic cancer research lab and immediately fell in love with biochemistry. So I decided to go to graduate school. I have a PhD in biochemistry and biophysics from UT MD Anderson, and performed my postdoctoral fellowship at Baylor College of Medicine, both in Houston. And I studied ion channel structure and function. After 3 years of postdoc, I knew I was ready for a change. I enjoyed teaching. I was also an adjunct professor at Houston Community College. I liked kind of running the lab as well. It was a role that I took on as one of the more senior postdocs in my lab at Baylor. But I knew that there was more out there, so I started to do my research about other types of careers. I knew I didn't want to be a professor and have a big lab with grad students and postdocs. I wanted to do something different. So during this time, I was also awarded a scholarship and entry into the Scientist Mentoring and Diversity Program, which is a one-year industry mentorship program for grad students and postdocs from diverse backgrounds. And through this program, I was introduced into the drug development process, and I had direct access to the top leaders in industry. I used my time wisely. I networked with all the mentors, built my network, honed in on my elevator pitch about myself. I had informational interviews so I could learn about various careers and people's journeys. I had industry connections, helped me improve my CV and resume, and I started to practice for interviews. And once I landed interviews, my first one was at Janssen, which is the pharmaceutical company of Johnson & Johnson. And I made that connection through the Scientist Mentoring and Diversity Program. And although my background is in small molecule basic science, I landed a job in large molecule discovery. And so I ended up joining Janssen in 2014 as a scientist in biologics discovery within Janssen Biotherapeutics, but that's just a fancy name for large molecule. And large molecule, as in like monoclonal antibodies, bispecifics, trispecifics, things like that. So I have extensive scientific and technical skills in the early stage R&D process of various therapeutic areas. And then I transitioned to an operations business lead role / CAR-T project manager role in analytical development. So development is more on the side of producing the batches that will go into clinical trials. And I transitioned in 2018, so I've been doing that for around 3 years. And here I lead the detailed planning of analytical readiness for large molecules and new modalities like cell therapies, gene therapies, and vaccines to meet, our regulatory commitments. So I'm happy to be here today and to answer all of your questions.
All right, I think let's just go ahead and ask questions.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about a mentoring program. I was wondering, where did you find it, and how did you find it? And right now, do you know if there are a lot of them that are happening, and if we can enroll, or at what stage do you encourage us to enroll?
Yeah, so this particular program, like I said, it's for grad students and postdocs from diverse backgrounds, as in like minorities, and I am a minority, I'm Mexican American. And then the program is most useful for postdocs and graduate students near graduation, within a year and a half out. Because at this point, you're going to be networking with industry leaders. So it's essentially a way to network and get a job, whether that will be, a postdoc in industry or an actual position as a scientist, or, there's jobs outside of the bench as well. Some companies have fellowships in regulatory, for example.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
But yeah, I actually found out about it through another postdoc in my lab who had done the program as well. So it's kind of word of mouth and just doing industry
Okay.
research online. Yeah.
Okay.
If you can share that particular mentoring program with me, I'll share it with the group.
Okay. Yep. Definitely.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing your journey. I have a question about the time when you break into the industry. You mentioned that you had a background in small molecule, but you started with large molecules in the industry. I'm just wondering, like, how the industry would think of, like, if a perfect match in your CV is one of the important things to hire entry-level people.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, sometimes it's up to the hiring manager. Lucky for me that they were looking for someone who could do like cell-based bioassays. And although I was doing small molecule screening, but I was still using cell-based bioassays, just not large molecule, but it was the same concept. I have a PhD, so I was expected to learn very quickly once I got the job. But in terms of the interview, I presented my research because I knew that they weren't really going to understand necessarily what I was talking about, like the neuroscience and electrophysiology behind it, because that's not what they do. So I presented it in a simple way. I told a great story. It was very hypothesis driven. And I think that helped. And I just wasn't throwing data at them. It was just kind of like taking them through my thought process of my research and how one discovery led to the next. And so after that, you answer the questions during your scientific talk, but you also have one-on-one talks with not only the hiring manager, but people on the team, other managers, or even, the head of the department. So during that time, I prepared very well for the interview. And they actually asked me a lot of behavioral type questions, not necessarily scientific questions. And I think for them that they were looking for someone with a different perspective. They were looking for someone with potential and talent, and that had a lot of soft skills as well. Once you enter industry, you can't be the quiet mouse in the corner just doing your experiments. They were looking for leadership qualities. And so while I was a grad student in postdoc, I was also involved in a lot of activities. I was a president of the Postdoc Association at Baylor, and even I was in the grad student associations while I was at UT in Houston. So I think they asked me a lot about those, how I manage my time, if I'm organized. Obviously, I did well in my presentation. I had a lot of good energy. So I think that really helped sell myself. And I was really bold during my career, my scientific talk. I ended my slides with kind of like why you should hire me. And I kind of listed out my skill set. That is a very bold move, but I think it worked in my favor in that case, because after seeing the science, not everyone would understand why I was a good fit. So I just kind of laid it out for everybody.
Yeah, thank you for a great answer. Yeah, it kind of tells us to be really prepared to explain that as a hiring manager about the connection between our background and the position.
Yep.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt the introduction. I just want to introduce Eric. Eric, we met today. I met Eric. Eric is in Wistar Institute. So Eric, you want to quickly introduce yourself? I think the connection with Jennifer and you will be quite interesting.
Oh, sorry, I was muted.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice to meet you, all of you. Well, I'm a Mexican, so yeah, that will be very interesting to meet Jennifer. Yeah, I'm a Mexican. I have a PhD in molecular biology, and I have been working around Mexico and US so many times because I was working in NIH for 3 years, and then I returned to Mexico to work for 5 years, and I'm back in US working now again in cancer. So yeah, I just joined. We start last October, so I will be happy to talk with any one of you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Continue the questions.
Oh, well, since we were on the topic of interviewing, I did want to recommend a book that was recommended to me that helps me prepare for interviews. And it's called The Quick and Complete Guide to a Winning Interview. And it's called Get That Job. But again, I can send this to you so you have it. And it's how to answer behavioral type questions, which in industry, you're going to get asked a lot of those during your interview. Like, what's your biggest challenge? And it's like how to answer that. And it's using the STAR method of interviewing: situation, task, action, result. And yeah, to me, it was a great help in preparing for my interviews.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, any other questions?
Can I would like to ask a question. Yeah. Hello, Dr. Jennifer. It was really nice hearing about your journey. So as a first year grad student, like first year PhD student, I know I have a long way to go, but I had just had a question. Like you said that you had even done a postdoc after your PhD, and then you decided to join the industry. So would you recommend like doing a postdoc after a PhD? Like, is it a necessity in order to join the industry, or it has in its own added advantage that helped you get a good position in the industry? So what is your thought about getting a postdoc after PhD?
Yeah, for me, I was undecided in what I wanted to do. So that's why I did an academic postdoc. But if your ultimate goal is to go into industry, there are many opportunities to do an industry postdoc. Janssen, Merck, GSK, Genentech. Genentech has a huge one. So yeah, you could do an industry postdoc if that is your ultimate goal. But even after graduating from grad school and you have that PhD, there's nothing stopping you from applying and going for that industry job right away. Maybe you'll go to a smaller mid-level company and do great. Maybe some of the higher tier companies may require a postdoc. Some may not. I think it just depends on the position and what the qualities they're looking for. But usually you have to read the job description. It's pretty clear of whether they require a postdoc or not. And if they don't require one, then yeah, definitely apply. For me, I think I finished grad school pretty quick in about like 4.5 years. So the additional 3 years of postdoc, I think, helped me gain confidence and build a skill set that helped me succeed in industry.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Jennifer.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Jennifer. So I have a question. So how do you determine the work and life balance in an industry versus academia?
It's much better than academia. So for me, it's very team oriented. So the work is distributed. It's not like in academia where it's just you working on your one project, right? So you're just doing a part of the project in industry. And the thing that I struggled with when I first joined and was transitioning from academia was balancing my time. As time went on, I became more efficient. Like when I first started, I thought I had to be in every single meeting during the day, which meant like there was no time for me to do my lab work. So I was doing it nights and weekends, which is not very efficient. So I had to learn which meetings were essential that I needed to attend, which ones, I could just follow up on action items, or my attendance wasn't required, and maybe a manager or a coworker could fill me in. And then once I started to kind of manage my time a little bit better, learn that I'm not by myself, that I work in a team, that I can ask people for help. People are very nice in industry. So if you're sitting next to an expert in a technique that you're learning, you should just go talk to them and learn from them. Because it is that team setting, people are willing to help and teach you, especially, as a new hire. So I think once I kind of learned that it's okay to ask for help and that I don't have to attend every single meeting and that I could focus on my lab work, then I started to become a more efficient scientist, and that helped me reduce my hours outside of like the normal working hours. And yeah, after about a year, it was more of like a 9-to-5 job for me. And then if I needed to come in real quick on a night or a weekend, I would, but it's not required and it's not encouraged. I know larger companies want healthy, focused scientists in the lab, so they don't want you to be burnt out. They want you to use your vacation time and you use your time wisely. So there's a lot of focus on that, at least at the company that I work at.
Good to know. Yeah, and secondly, like when you were you told like that when you were like being interviewed like for position, so you gave a like presentation and you tried that not to dump too much data into that in the slides. So like what would you like say, like what's the like optimum time, like if someone like suppose like I'm giving an interview and someone asked me like to present like your work, so what should be a good time frame like of presenting your work, and like
well,
how much time should I dedicate?
They tell you you'll have an hour, but you need to leave like 15 minutes for questions. So yeah, usually there's an agenda that will be sent to you prior, and it will tell you how long your talk should be. But yeah, I would aim for 40-45 minutes. Leave plenty of time for questions.
Can I interrupt? I generally don't interrupt in these questions, and most of you know that I don't interrupt. But this one, I feel like I should say something. And Jennifer, you mentioned it earlier. So Piyush, one of the things that I learned during my procedure, I was a postdoc in Cornell University Medical College, and they had a postdoctoral presentation, and that was the first presentation I had done. I had never done real presentations before, and so when I did the presentation, I put everything I knew. Everything. Like that presentation was, after an hour, I still had 50 slides left. So, because I didn't know, like nobody had told me that, that this is how you present. I thought, the great opportunity to let everybody know everything I know. That is absolutely a bad idea. And the best thing to do is to just tell one story, one beautiful story, or maybe two. That's it. Think about that you're telling a story, you're not presenting your data. So I'm going to pause here.
No, I 100% agree. And I think that's part of why I got the job, was because I told a good story and didn't throw out all of the data. I made it very clear. I simplified it. I had a lot of pictures. So I think that really helped.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Thanks.
Yeah. And, if you're presenting to experts in your field, go ahead and have the figures and backup slides. So that way, if they do ask questions, it's there.
Can I ask you something, Jennifer? How is a scientist in industry? How is evaluated? Because, in academia, we are evaluated by publications or papers or grants. How is the industry science in that part? I mean, have you do also publications every frequently or something
well, I'm
like
no
that?
longer in the lab, but so we are expected to publish. So we do have postdocs in the department that I was in. They were expected to publish, but you would have scientists, senior scientists, principal scientists working with the postdocs. So that is a way that you can publish. We have patents as well. But that's not the only way that we can show that we're successful scientists. We contribute to identifying a lead molecule or progressing that molecule into the clinic and eventually getting that molecule approved by the FDA, for example. So for me, yes, I have a publication from industry, but that's no longer an indicator of my success since I'm in operations now. I'm no longer in the lab. And you have to remember, it's not as easy to publish all of the time because we can't publish on our lead molecule or something that we're still working on, right? It's, so you can publish on other things like a process or a mechanism of action, or maybe you're studying a certain target and we are targeting it with human monoclonal antibodies, but we also have surrogates in mice. So we have mouse monoclonal antibodies. Maybe you and the postdoc can team up and that publish on the, drug development of those antibodies on that particular drug pathway, something like that. So it may not be on the top couple of lead molecules or the target that we're working on commercializing, but there are definitely ways that you can still publish. And then you asked how are we rated as scientists. There's different ways that we are rated in terms of feedback that we get. It affects our salary and bonuses, and it's what you get done, so like your scientific goals, but also how you get done. Are you a good leader? Are you a good team player? That kind of thing. Are you making those connections? Are you being innovative? So there's lots of different ways that you can prove that you're a great scientist. And even though I'm not in the lab anymore, I'm still expected to contribute to the science.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Jennifer. My question is related to one of your earlier answers. So as graduate students, we are used to perform everything related to our project by ourselves, like right from getting the chemical till analyzing the data. But as you said, work in industry is team oriented. So how do you go around that? Like, is one person planning some experiments and then the next person performs next set of experiments, or how do you coordinate that part?
Yeah, it depends. Like for me and when I was in discovery, we would have a target to work on and we needed a specific assay. And that particular assay would be essentially assigned to me. Like we need to figure this particular pathway out. So then I could work with people on my team, or maybe there was a research associate that was underneath me that could work alongside me, or maybe do some of the cell culture work for me, or run a couple of the assays for me, but it was up to me to come up with the assay design. But again, it was teamwork. And then maybe when it came time to presenting the data, maybe my manager would present the data to a higher team meeting when we were making decisions, that kind of thing. So that's the kind of teamwork that we would do to get just one particular assay done. But that's just internal. We also manage work with contractors, either internal or external. So sometimes you may be managing a package of work at an outside company. So you have to learn to kind of be not only a technical project manager, but a scientific one as well. And make sure that they're going to deliver the data and they're doing what you want, and all of that kind of project management skills. So it's not just you being in the lab 100% of the time, especially because you have a PhD. They're expecting you to lead projects as well and come up with new innovative ideas. And like for me, when I joined, I mentioned that my background wasn't in large molecule, but I could do assay design. Like that was something that I could learn. But I was designing assays that I had never done before, using technology I'd never done before. So that was a great skill. People learn that I can learn things really quickly and pick things up. So then I got to do some really cool, innovative projects that I ended up winning like awards for at Janssen, and it involved like gene editing. Although, my background is in protein, like membrane protein structure. I could do molecular biology, but I wasn't an expert. But within 3 months, I was expected to be an expert. And design, knock out cell lines, knock out mice, all of these things. So you're just given a lot of responsibility quickly, whether you're managing your own work, managing the work at a company, or maybe a technician under you. It's your responsibility to get it done however your team needs it to get done.
Thank you. That was a really elaborate answer.
Hey, Jennifer, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. My question is, what are your tips for networking?
Tips for networking. So a few of you introduced yourself when I joined the call, and I would suggest that you work on your elevator speech. And I think having that quick 30-second grab your attention kind of speech, not just, okay, this is my name, I do research in this area, you talk about it for 2 minutes, my eyes glaze over, and then I totally forget what your name is or why we were talking in the first place. So, oh, this is another book that I recommend that I have here. It's called Brag, The Art of Tooting Your Own Horn Without Blowing It. This is a great one. It's about how to talk about yourself and how to write that elevator kind of pitch, like how you introduce yourself. And so I think that's step one. I'm an introvert myself, so it's not easy for me to just go up to anybody and start up a conversation. And that's part one of networking, is talking to people. It takes a lot of practice. And if you kind of already have your intro in your head of what you're going to say, and even that little attention grabbing thing that you could start off with, like mine would be, as a little kid, I was, let me think of what I said. I actually worked on this recently with my team. I forgot what it was. Oh, I was the little kid in the corner that was always tinkering with puzzles and things like that. So I knew that I liked to solve problems. And so that was kind of like my way of connecting with people, not just saying like, I'm a scientist, I work at Janssen, and that kind of. And it was just a way to kind of make a connection with someone, and maybe you can make that discussion with them a little bit more memorable. And I'm like, oh yeah, remember we talked about puzzles and things like that when we were chatting. So that's just one fun way of kind of getting some attention. Of course, hone in on your 30 seconds of what you really want to talk about. And then after that initial chat with the person, I think it's really important to have that follow-up. Like, now you all have met me, you'll connect with me on LinkedIn, but don't forget to send me a message every now and then and just say, hey, remember me? We connected. I have another question. Do you mind if we set up an informational interview and I can chat with you one-on-one? You'd be surprised how many people I offer that to and they don't ever follow up. So I think making the initial connection, following up and maintaining those connections are really important, because you'd never know when, could be 5 years down the road and you are maybe applying for a job at the company that they're working at. People cross paths quite frequently. So I hope that helps.
That helps a lot. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Practice makes perfect. I know, because like I said, I'm an introvert and I used to be the little mouse in the corner.
Jennifer, to add to that question, you mentioned about following up with the people on the LinkedIn, right? So I think in the past, I have always sent out the LinkedIn invites to people, and then I have failed to continue that connection with them. And the other side of it is I try to contact these people, and then they never probably respond to you when we ask for an informational interview. So my question is, how can I nudge them without really annoying them by keeping on messaging them in LinkedIn? Is there anything that you suggest for someone who doesn't respond immediately?
Yeah, I think having a cold kind of, what do they call it? Like a cold call when you don't know them and you don't have any connection with them at all and you just randomly connected with them on LinkedIn, that's not easy. For me, like I do it through people that I know, like, oh, we're connected through this person. And I ask that person, can you connect me with this other third person? So I think it's much easier that way. So if you're in LinkedIn and you see a mutual connection, ask that person to introduce you, then you'll get noticed. And then once you have that initial informational interview with someone, ask them to recommend 2 more people that you could be connected with. So it's like kind of building your network as you're doing these informational interviews. And I think that's much easier than just randomly messaging someone on LinkedIn who may or may never see your message or answer.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I love the silence.
You can ask me anything. You don't have to be too formal.
I can ask you one more if no one has a question.
Sure.
This is again regarding transition from academia to industry, Jennifer. So I am eyeing some of the clinical or medical affairs kind of position. The problem which I face most often is looking at the laundry list of preferred requirements or qualification that is usually given in the job posting.
Yep.
I'm going to say it's almost always 8 to 10 bullet points, of which I think I will surely meet 3 or 5 of them, probably meet 2 of them, and not at all meet 3 of them. So I'm trying to see how I can convince myself that regardless of how many qualifications you meet, you should go ahead and then apply. How do you think I can proceed with this mental block which I have? Seeing the job posting and probably feeling that I'm not there, even though I meet 5 of the 10 qualifications.
Yeah, I think the job description is for like the ideal candidate, and that candidate doesn't always exist. So the hiring manager may be okay with 50%, but again, when you sell yourself, whether that's through your CV or you have a connection that you made through your network, and maybe your CV is going to get in, through that way, that will really help kind of push you over the edge and stand out compared to everybody else. So yeah, I would not discourage you from applying. I think if you're 50% or higher, I think that's great. You should definitely apply. Because sometimes, like I said, not everyone's going to have 100% of what they're looking for. And that's, again, is just the ideal candidate. So definitely apply. Do not have a mental block about it. I applied, like when I was applying, I applied for anything and everything. And it's okay if you get that immediate rejection. It just means you weren't what they're looking for, and that's fine. So on to the next. Like there's plenty of opportunities, especially right now. I've seen so many companies hiring right now.
And there is this notion about putting in too much application and people being blacklisted. Is that really a thing?
No, I don't think so. Because most of the time, the HR people aren't the same. Some of these companies are so big, they're not going to talk to each other. Like it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I just have a quick follow-up question about like what are the do's and don'ts for like putting up a CV?
For CV, the do's are for every like bullet point that you have, you need to have a problem, action, and result. Like what problem did you solve? What action did you take? And what were the results? So for me, the results were, I did this study by this method, which resulted in a first author publication. So that's how I have every bullet point in my CV. And I don't do a full CV when I'm applying to industry jobs. I have like a condensed CV. So maybe you're going to put your top 3 publications and your top 3 abstracts, and then you can say see online for the rest or something like that. So that way your CV is not 5 pages long. Maybe condense it to like 3. Especially if you're applying to a scientist position, I don't want to see a 1-page resume. I need to see the science. So I think 2 to 3 pages is good when it comes to applying for jobs. And I think you have to remember that the HR people looking at these are doing the initial screen. They're not scientists, so you want to show that impact. And by impact, I mean that result. Did it result in funding of an R01, maybe a fellowship, a travel grant, or a publication, anything like that. I think that's a great way of showing your impact. Or maybe it led to a collaboration. Collaboration, that's a great way of showing teamwork, which is really important in industry. So I think if you can incorporate industry thought or industry terms into your CV, that would be great. If you've done anything like 96 well plate and up, it's high throughput, that kind of thing. Anything automated, that would be great. Cell-based bioassays versus you ran a ELISA or you ran some kind of other plate. Immunoassays, something like that. Definitely have a box of skills. Instead of listing out your skills within the bullet points, I like to just separate them in a separate box. And it's just really easy for the hiring manager to go scan your box of skills. So you can have like your molecular biology skills, you can have your cell-based bioassay skills, whatever, your protein purification skills. So however you wanna put that. And then if you wanna highlight some of your soft skills as well, if you led an initiative or something like that. Continuous improvement is big in industry. So if you reduce the time of an assay, reduce the cost of an assay, improved sensitivity of an assay, all of those things definitely include in your bullet points. Those are really important impacts that we look at, not just you did this study and it related to Alzheimer's. Like, great, but like, what did you really do? So.
Yeah, thank you. These are really great suggestions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm sure there's some great online templates, but if you look at I think it's called the PAR method, problem action result, for your CV, that will kind of help you structure the bullet points.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, this is Tanishka. I kind of hopped on to the call late because I just came back from lab. So somebody might have asked this question, I'm not sure. But so is it easier to get hired if you already have a lot of skill set, or you just need to show them that you're willing or you can like learn quickly? And how do you show it? I mean,
yeah, I think again, it's what the job description or hiring manager is looking for specifically. And I think we were talking about this earlier, Arun, if you have, just 50% of what they're looking for, you should still apply. And you can show your potential and your soft skills in other ways. Like for me, I had on my CV that I was president of the Postdoc Association, and I didn't realize how big a deal that was. And I was going to get asked so many questions about that during my interview. But it was just one thing that set me apart that I did to show that I had leadership skills, that I had communication skills outside of, presenting my dissertation and things like that. So I think showing that you're well-rounded is very important as well. Having that box of skills to show that you have the basic skill sets. And then if you want, in your cover letter, that's optional if you want to do those. They're not required. You can talk about how you're really passionate about that certain area that they're looking for. And to give you an example, I was a scientist in the lab and I transitioned to a job in operations and project management. I didn't have any finance skills, but I said, I'm at a point in my career where I'm ready for the next challenge. I'm really passionate about moving the science forward, but from the business perspective, and I really want to learn it. I've been an outsider looking in, and I want to be a part of it. Like that's how you can show that you're passionate about a a certain area that you don't have skills in. And so if you do get to the interview part, I think you have to show that enthusiasm and show that you have the potential.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You really have to work on being enthusiastic during interviews and show that you're not nervous. You have to be well prepared and come with stories about yourself. And I think that the brag book will help with you come up with stories about yourself. So that way you can answer those behavioral type questions when they ask. Like,
okay,
where
thank
do
you so
see
much.
yourself in 5 to 10 years? Like, you're going to get asked those questions.
Yeah.
So you got to have the answer prepared already.
Hey, Narendra.
Yeah.
Actually, since I'm already on the spot, I might as well add something. So Jennifer, I actually, I'm a family friend. I work in industry already. I'm at GSK Vaccines. I have a question around bridging the gap between, so I'm on the commercial side, so kind of bridging the gap between R&D and commercial. And so if you're in operations, I'm guessing you do a little bit of that. Yeah. What are some of the tips that you might have in how to bridge the gap?
I guess when I'm coming from the analytical development perspective, so I work with our QC teams, our supply chain teams closely, and getting them prepared for, getting their labs prepared for everything that's coming their way. So while we are doing our assay development, we want to get them ready for their labs to get ready for qualification and validation of those assays, right? So getting them involved as soon as we can, I think is beneficial. And I think when we're developing the assays, you have to keep in mind, are these assays QC friendly? Are they, yes, our team can do it for a handful of samples, but when we go commercial, they're going to be doing it for like 10,000 samples. And these may not be PhD level scientists. They may be masters or even people with bachelors who are just going to be doing the routine testing. Are they going to be able to do this? Is this QC friendly? Is it ready to go into high throughput? Can we automate it? Like, those are the types of questions that we ask ourselves in the development side before we go to the supply chain commercial side. So I hope that kind of answers your question. That's along the lines of what I do, making sure that we're communicating well with our supply chain teams, and that way they are ready. So when we transition everything to them, then they're comfortable, they're ready to go, and they can hit the ground running.
Yeah, that was super helpful. Thank you. And I think just correlating more to this conversation, I liked what you just mentioned, and you brought this up earlier too, is the translation to the real world. And when I was transitioning into industry, I think one of the things I was told was everything. I mean, I used to talk to a scientist about the research I did in cancer therapy, and his immediate feedback was, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Make it realistic to me. So I think that's, that the whole idea of how can you translate that to real world is very important coming into industry. So thank you.
Yeah, and I think you'll get a lot of that kind of feedback in industry. You can design like the most complicated, perfect assay, but if it doesn't have the sensitivity, if it doesn't have the reproducibility, then it doesn't really mean much, right? And it has to be done within a certain time frame. We are under time constraints in industry. At the end of the day, it is a business. So it's just as important to fund a project as it is to kill a project, right? We have to make business decisions. So a lot of our milestones in the projects are go, no go decisions. Like, okay, we got to this milestone. We're going to review this data package. Are we going to go forward? Are we going to kill it? Or maybe we're going to just take a different direction. So yeah, I think that is another lesson learned for me during my transition from academia into industry. You have to kind of take a business perspective sometimes, or a real world perspective in that case. And something else that I learned as a scientist, I was super detailed, right? You're kind of taking that 10-foot view of just your little project, but sometimes you have to step out of it and do that 10,000-foot view or 50,000-foot view and look at the big picture. So that's something that I learned now, especially that I'm on the business side, that yes, I may be delayed in my project 1 or 2 days, but I may have made my whole project on critical path because I was late 2 days and I didn't order my reagent on time or something like that, or I didn't check to see if I had the antibody I needed to do this flow assay. So it's like you kind of have to think very detailed about your project, make sure everything's planned and coordinated, but then also step out and communicate timelines, and just be realistic about what you're doing. You never want to, how do they call it? Overpromise and underdeliver. You just always want to be realistic about everything. And then having that detailed view and then the big picture view will aid in your decision making as a scientist.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. So Jennifer, let's do quick rapid fire. Okay.
Okay.
If you had a superpower and there's some skill that you wanted to get immediately, what would that be?
I wish I was, my superpower would be, I would want to be multilingual, because I think although a lot of scientists speak English, I think being able to interact with minds across the world, some of the top minds across the world, would be amazing. So that would be my top skills, multilingual.
Nice. Which, in the recent years, let's say in the last year or so, which drug that has been approved that you really like? Doesn't have to be from Janssen.
Well, the one that I've been involved with that at least has been filed, and this has been in the news, was a CAR T project from Janssen. But I would say any of the CAR T projects, the chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapies, those have been transformational for the oncology field. So I'm proud to be part of that kind of field. But I think there's a lot of great work that's being done in the area, especially at UPenn, but a lot of the great companies as well, J&J, but there's a lot of startups that are doing great work in the CAR T space. And I definitely think it's going to be translational, and the data coming out and the impact on the patients is very motivating.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Book. I know you gave us 2 books, but what are you reading these days?
Actually, most of them are self-help books like this. So other than that, it's cooking books.
Okay.
Yeah, but I would say the Bragg one that I suggested is the most recent one that I read. But yeah, there's a lot of self-help books, or ones that that help you identify your skills. Those have been some of the top ones for me.
What would we find you doing on the weekends?
I'm a big traveler. So although it's been kind of slowed down with COVID, I did have the opportunity to travel internationally recently. So usually on the weekends, if I'm not traveling, I'm going on a road trip, I'm doing something, I'm going somewhere. That's something that I really enjoy doing.
Okay. What do you do when you have a bad day?
I think coming home to my dog, seeing his happy face and cuddling all on me and jumping on me, I think that will cheer anybody up. It cheers me up.
What's something that people don't know about you?
That I grew up on a small farm. Most people don't know that about me. Yeah, we had emus, an ostrich, chickens, goats, all that thing. It was more of a hobby kind of thing for my parents, but it was a great way to grow up around all these exotic animals.
Nice, nice. Which celebrity or scientists would you like to meet? It could be past or present.
I think scientist-wise, I would want to meet one that has, his name is escaping me right now, a lot of global impact. I believe he's the astrophysicist, African-American man, and I just can't remember his name right now.
Nick deGrasse.
Yes, Neil Tyson deGrasse. Yes, that's it.
Nick, yeah.
I haven't met him personally, but I did go to one of his talks, and this maybe like 10 years ago, and it was actually really enlightening. And it was, he started off the talk about how other countries have scientists on their money, and how the US doesn't really do that. And it was just kind of like asking little kids, like, who is this scientist? And they had no clue in the US. And it was just kind of like, okay, this is what I want to do. I really want to focus a part of my life on increasing the education in STEM and pipeline, the STEM pipeline. So that's something that I'm passionate about. And it was just kind of eye-opening that I think scientists are heroes, but maybe in the US, not everybody does. So I want to change that perception.
Wow, wow, that's superb. Just a couple more questions. I won't go through all 10. Recently, I'll tell you why. This is a very philosophical question. I'm going to ask you, what is the purpose of your life? And I'll tell you, I'll preface it by why I'm asking you that question. Because just last weekend, I don't know if you hear a NPR podcast by Shankar Vedanti. It's called Hidden Brain. Do you hear it? Yeah, anyway, it's a very, very nice podcast. It comes every Friday on NPR. And last week he did, what is the purpose? How do you determine what is the purpose of life? So what's the purpose of your life?
I think I just talked about it. I'm very passionate about education and STEM and increasing the pipeline for diversity in STEM. So I think that's my purpose. And me being here and engaging with all levels of people and all different types of people. And, you know, a lot of scientists don't look like me, right? Growing up, I didn't have anyone who looked like me to look up to. And, you know, that was not an easy path for me. So I would like to make that path easier for other kids.
Yeah, you should listen to that podcast. But one thing that there are very, very nice things in that podcast. But one thing that I think really was nice that I liked is you can actually tell people who have a purpose just by looking at them, because they have this radiance in their face, and you do. And so
well, you know,
when people have purpose in their life, it radiates. And he talks about it in the blog, in the podcast. It's worth listening.
And you said it was NPR?
NPR. Okay. It's called Hidden Brain.
Hidden Brain. I'll listen to it.
Anyway, and the general question is, I know you've given a lot of advice and really precise advice to many questions. Any last words that you want to share?
I think you have to own your own career, own your own path. Only you can set that path. And, you know, no one's going to hand you anything. You have to fight for it. And whether you have to hustle for it, network, scratch your way through, find your path, like do whatever you have to do to stand out and get what you want. And so I think that's something that I've done in my career that's helped me be successful. I don't put limits on myself. You know, I set a goal and I go for that goal. And I think for me, that's a great way of living. I'm always like striving for the next step, striving for more. And I'm open to new possibilities at all the time. So I think it just helps me stay positive.
Yeah, Thank you so much. I'm going to let you go, but I'm going to ask everyone else to stay for a few minutes just to get their first impression, and I'll share the video with you once we're done.
A network should last a lifetime. Let us help you create lasting professional relationships with our world-class mentors through the Biopatrika Industry Mentorship Program. A strategic guidance program unlike no other, full of expert interviews, industry internship opportunities, CV writing, inflection point analysis, life maps, and of course, the gateway to your dream career. For a limited time only, all our services are freely available for you, as we truly want you to succeed.